This is Alex.
Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader.
Still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. Everyone, the price of Bitcoin is just over 69,000 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. And coming up next, Roxom, the Bitcoin native trading platform, and RoxomTV's parent company just made history. They have launched the first ever oil versus Bitcoin perpetual futures contract, letting traders bet on crude oil directly priced in Bitcoin, no dollars involved. This is a major shift. Until now, every oil trade in the world has been tied to the US dollar. Roxom just broke that link. Now you can trade the oil to Bitcoin ratio in one position. You think oil is going up and Bitcoin is going down, or the opposite, you don't need two trades anymore. It's all in one. This is not just a new product, it's the early stages of a new financial system where global commodities are priced in Bitcoin instead of dollars. And Roxom is building that market first. Roxom's head of research, Luca Pagano, put it simply saying, quote, "We built this because we believe the most interesting trades in the next decade won't be dollar denominated." He is joining us this morning to talk about it. Welcome back, Luca. Good to see you. How you doing this morning? Or this afternoon, I guess.
Hey, Walker, how's everything going? Great on my end, so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me more about this. What's kind of the rationale behind, let's say, ending the petrodollar exchange in Roxom's own small way?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we thought we're always thinking of what are the most important products globally to trade, as we have the lenses on Bitcoin. And I think, we launched at the beginning, we launched Gold BTC, which is definitely one of the most important there in global terms, because not everything is US equities, and commodities are first on the line. And we've been working very hard on oil BTC because I think, during considering the current context, of the world and what oil means or represents in this context, of the war and or potential conflicts, we believe it's a very important asset. And also, with Bitcoin dynamics, it makes a lot of sense, honestly, because they have some important negative correlation, right? And it's very important for us to let the world trade oil in Bitcoin.
I love it. I want to get into some of those, a couple of the points there you mentioned. But first, I know that Roxom did put out a promo video for this. Let's go ahead and roll that, and then we'll bring you back in.
1973. But there's one great problem: sharp increases in the price of gasoline.
1990. Go for 2022.
Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports.
Today.
Don't use the Strait.
Oil has responded to geopolitical shocks with volatility.
When this is over, oil prices are going to go down very, very rapidly.
For the first time, you can trade that volatility in Bitcoin, oil BTC, only on Roxom.
All right, banger video there. As usual, shout out to the team. Okay, so tell me about this. You mentioned just I think you mentioned one thing was just like some inverse correlation there between Bitcoin and oil. Can you talk about that a little bit more for those of us? As you know, look, I'm not a trader. I'm a
Yeah.
DCA into Bitcoin. So can you explain it for us laymen out here, kind of what you're talking about there, why this pairing actually makes a lot of sense?
Yeah, perfectly, perfect. So, um, when you think the market in Bitcoin, I think there's a lot of interesting things that pop up that don't just don't do with USD denominated, right? So when you see we have three assets right now, three perpetual futures contracts, which are gold, US 500, and oil, and well, of course, we have USDT BTC, right? So um, when you see these assets denominated in dollars, they have a certain volatility, and certain correlation across each other. But then when you denominated them in Bitcoin, they have different volatility because you account for, in this case, the volatility of oil, and the volatility of Bitcoin, right? So when assets correlate in a positive way, right, volatility decreases, right? Because if, for example, if the price of oil increases in dollars and the price of Bitcoin also increases in dollars, well, the movement of oil BTC is going to be substantially lower, in relative terms. So why do I say this? Because I think oil Bitcoin is a especially interesting product. I mean, I'm a trader. I love volatility. Traders definitely tend to eat with volatility, and this is one of the wildest pairs, honestly, to trade. Not only because you can make a lot of sense of it, right? In terms of reading the room, seeing the context, seeing if investors are risk on or risk off. Because if the world is risk off, as it's been a couple of weeks in the latest months, I think the latest months are a great example of the how interesting a pair like oil Bitcoin can become, because, well, when the investors are risk off, oil tends to rise, right, and Bitcoin tends to fall. So oil in Bitcoin rises even furthermore, right? And that I think it's a great phenomenon. When you're trading in Roxom, the end goal, at least in my mind, is accumulate more Bitcoin. And volatility gives you better opportunities to do so. Of course, there's risk involved as anything in the market, guys, but I think that's what makes oil Bitcoin so interesting in terms of risk on, risk off dynamics, and the negative correlation they have between each other, which makes it much more volatile in terms of uh, those kind of situations.
And this is super fascinating to me. Again, because I'm not a trader, it's like I can kind of look from the outside in a little bit. I still find it fascinating. I want to unpack a little bit what you mentioned about the general appetite right now, risk on, risk off. What I've been following, which I think is really interesting right now, is gold versus Bitcoin as well. So oil is doing its thing, right? But if we look just since the start of the Iran war, obviously go back before that, gold's had a banner run, right? I mean, silver as well, but let's leave out the little brother. Let's just talk about the big dog gold, right? Gold has had an amazing run since the start of the Iran war. And by the way, Bitcoin was kind of getting clobbered a bit as gold was ripping. Iran war starts. We saw gold kind of start to, maybe it had just run too far. I don't know. But how have you been looking at the relationship between Bitcoin and gold since the start of this conflict in Iran? I think it's something I've seen, estimates depending on where you're pegging it at, but 25+% increase in the Bitcoin, to gold price. Like Bitcoin has outperformed gold during this period, even though it's a period where typically you might expect, gold, the original safe haven asset, to be outperforming. Is it just that gold ran so hard, so hot for so long, it didn't have much more room to go, and Bitcoin was the opposite? It was tanking quite a bit, and so it didn't have much more room to
Yeah.
go lower? Or how are you thinking about that?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, because what dynamics bring you on is, for me, some extreme measures in terms of investor sentiment, right? So, in the context of gold, you've had an asset which obliterated basically since the beginning of the year. I mean, and even earlier, like gold, uh, is has been on a wild run to the upside. In terms of gold Bitcoin, it's been, a 3-year high, I believe. So like very interesting prices in terms of ratios. And when you think of gold Bitcoin turning around, it makes sense in several ways, at least on my end. First, on the overpriced action of gold, for sure, but secondly, I think Bitcoin has a very interesting thing, and I'll get back to gold and oil on that as well, which is Bitcoin is a risk on asset. I mean, at least between, like, if you analyze it objectively regarding correlation that it has on US equities and risk on assets, it pretty much behaves similar. Why do I not say the same? Because I think in extreme measures, Bitcoin is where it actually makes sense for investors. It kind of has a range where in a normal situation where when investors are risk off, they tend to not like Bitcoin. But if the situation is too extreme, such as of a war or I think honestly the pandemic was a great example of this. Well, Bitcoin makes a lot of sense, in terms of big crises. Actually, it rised on the biggest crisis we had, 2008, 2009. So, like, it's something that makes sense in terms of why would you stack some Bitcoin, right? So I think that's where all Bitcoin is going to be very interesting to follow, honestly, because, well, in this tension, in this type of tensions, you have oil that tends to rise, right? Because of the shape of the conflict, it makes a lot of sense if basically the offer of oil gets a big hit, But then on the other hand, you have a currency or a coin which is made up almost perfectly for this type of situations of big crisis. So I'm personally gonna be following a lot of oil Bitcoin. For me, gold Bitcoin is a little bit easier in terms of the turnover. I see gold hitting its highs already, probably in a gold BTC ratio, or at least the risk reward isn't much attractive to long gold Bitcoin, at least on my end. Oil Bitcoin, on the other hand, I think it will be very telling on what happens between the conflicts, right, that you're having right now.
I mean, this has got to be a pretty like you must really love to eat volatility, Luca, because I mean, to try and trade, like, first of all, you don't, I mean, as far as I know, have access to any material non-public information. You're not a White House insider. You're not, if only you were, you could really, make some money like these guys are right now. But I mean, this has got to be a very difficult proposition, trying to figure out how to sort of hedge your bets on this during a conflict where things can literally change on a tweet, on a Truth Social post, on a press conference, on a missile strike. It's like, how do you even begin to go into that? Like, I'm just trying to understand the mentality of a trader like yourself. How do you position yourself for this when there is just so much uncertainty and seemingly like there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to anything until after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, I am a volatility lover, to the downside, upside. Volatility doesn't have directions. It just has sigma movement. So I love it, and I honestly thought of this product as a trader. I think it would be particularly interesting for traders to explore and navigate that volatility. And on my end, honestly, like, I was positioned a few hours ago on a betting on the downside of oil versus Bitcoin. But I will be very wary, honestly, of how this feels like, and of what the conflict brings. And exploring the news, I have the same information as any mortal out there. So I'll be trading on your sidelines, and we'll see what the opportunity of the market brings.
So as you kind of mentioned earlier, this is like basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, taking this, oil denominated in Bitcoin and vice versa, this is sort of creating like a little bit of volatility on steroids, right? You're already dealing with two commodities, one a digital, one a physical commodity that are very volatile by any, in the short term at least, very volatile by anyone's measure of that. I mean, is this just sort of creating the ultimate sort of, I guess, like product for that volatility, or maybe not product for it, but ultimate way to try and hedge on that volatility? Like, is that what it's doing? I mean, is there another pair out there? Like, obviously, gold, Bitcoin, yeah, it's got its swings, but gold itself, it's not too volatile. It's been a little bit volatile recently, but on the long end, it's not. Bitcoin, sure, in
Yeah.
the long term is up and to the right, but in the short term, we know Bitcoin moves around a lot. So how do you think about that?
Yeah. So that's a great question because I think it's very important for having a better perspective on the Bitcoin markets. First thing to be aware of is that markets are not the same, and the benchmark and the measuring stick you're using matters a lot, not only in terms of the behavior of the assets you're going to be investing and trading in, but also, of course, on the wealth or the measuring stick you'll be using to measure basically your net worth and your risk on returns and everything, right? So, in terms of oil, just to give you a perspective, on 2026, oil is up basically 60%, more or less. In Bitcoin terms, oil is up 105%. So that is nuts for any. Imagine if you've longed oil Bitcoin, and you would be up like the opportunities and also the risks here, Walker, because I love to talk about the risks as well, right? The opportunities and risks basically enlarged by a good dimension, and I think understanding what your base asset is and how each volatility correlates between each other, because correlation is a key part of this type of study. I think it's not only very interesting, but also a great way to analyze and make advantage of the market, right?
No, I mean, again, Luca, I'm super fascinated by this because, as I've said, I'm not a trader. I'm much more simple. I don't think I have the cojones to be able to trade the kind of volatility that you do. I keep it simple. I stack Bitcoin, but I love what Roxom has done with this Bitcoin denominated exchange more broadly, because
Yeah.
it goes exactly back to what you were saying about how are you actually thinking about denominating your wealth. If you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking in fiat terms, you're using the wrong measuring stick, right? It's a bad measuring stick. It's like a floppy measuring stick or an elastic one. It's moving. If you're using Bitcoin, you know the denominator. Is that kind of how much does that really just go into how you are? Like, has that really changed since being able to do this with Roxom? Has that sort of changed your mentality even a little bit, just how you view it, looking at these numbers in a different way?
Well, to be honest, for me, once I saw it, like I cannot unsee it now. What do I mean by that? I invite anyone in the audience to just pick a chart. Just use Apple if you want to make it sound familiar. You see Apple in US dollars, and it's like it's the most lovely thing you'll see, in the world. It's just going up steady with no rush, just up only. Then you see it adjusted by inflation, and it's a little bit sad, like it's almost as it were a T-bill, it looks like a bond. And then you denominate it in Bitcoin, and you just want to cry, and you ask yourself, why would you invest in an asset that it's basically losing its value every year in what real currencies tend to look like, like that's at least how I see it today, Walker. And on the one hand, like it's as powerful to change the measuring stick as to choose the investments you make, to be honest, because if not, you will not have a benchmark, or a strong at least benchmark, to analyze whether that investment is successful or not. And on the other hand, you may know what if you look at gold, Bitcoin, for example. I may know that gold will raise in value against Bitcoin. I may not know if it will do against dollars, for example. And that's another thing that's interesting. When you stop thinking only in dollars and you start thinking about relative assets, and essentially at the end of the day, you want to stack more net worth. And what do you measure net worth? Well, um, that depends on each one of you guys, but try to do it in a hard asset, and I'll assure you, first of all, it's gonna be a heck of a lot harder to earn investments, but you will kick dollars ass, that's for sure.
Well, that's the thing too. Even if you think back to like the COVID times, that initial kind of stimulus checks hit, everybody's a genius investor. Every investment goes up. You've got Dave Portnoy on his, Davey day trader things. Just buy. It doesn't matter what you buy. Everything goes up. Doesn't matter, right? But the reality is that okay, that was true for a time. But if you're denominating it in Bitcoin, it looks a little bit less rosy. Maybe you're not as good of a trader as you thought you were, but I think that's a hard thing for people to accept. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a hard mentality shift for them to say, maybe I'm not as much of a genius as I thought I was. Like if I would have just held Bitcoin, or at least held a portion in Bitcoin, I would have ended up the same or maybe much better. But it's like an ego check people have to do, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough market out there, man, when you measure it in a real stake. And also, you can do this in any currency. Like you can do this in gold if you want. I'm just for me, Bitcoin makes sense, of course, and for Roxxon, but like, um, just making the change of adjusting it by inflation, you'll start to see things that you haven't seen before. I mean, I'm from Argentina, Walker. Here, any investor that measures their money in pesos is a freaking genius. The thing is if they are worth more than before or not. So that's for me. The economy is a big Argentina on the world, and you should start measuring things on hard assets.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. It's depending on, in the US we're privileged perhaps because, well, we certainly are. We've had the world's reserve currency, the US dollar. Hey, we talk about it's the worst. It's the worst, but really it's the worst except for all the rest. Like it's I say it, it's the skinniest kid at fat camp, right? Like it's still at fat camp. It's still, it's still out of shape. It still needs to lose some weight.
Yeah.
But compared to the rest, it's like we've been very privileged. Look at the Iranian rial as a extreme example right now, going like hyperinflation in dollar terms, hyperinflation in Bitcoin terms, very much so, and Argentina, again, you look at, pick any currency, maybe Swiss franc has done okay. But for the most part, it's, if you're measuring it in a fiat, if you're measuring your gains in a fiat, you're just measuring it in something that's not a very good measuring stick. It's always beholden to the central bank, to the government. And so I love this mentality shift, even if you're not a trader, like myself, again, not a trader, but I like to look at these things. Look, if I do make, because I make some other like small investments here and just with money I can afford to lose, the rest I keep in Bitcoin, but some small investments and more of long-term trades, but I still need to look and at the end of the day, do an analysis and okay, this felt like a good investment, but was I able to acquire more Bitcoin at the end of it or not? If I wasn't, it wasn't a good investment. If I would have just been better off holding Bitcoin. So mainly I trade when I want to remind myself what a bad trader I am so that I can, go back and say, okay, yep, Walker, told you were terrible at this. Go back to podcasting, talk show hosting, and leave the trading to the people who know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, Walker. Like another great exercise, just you don't have to rotate all yourself into Bitcoin if you don't want, in terms of Bitcoin denomination. But just as a previous example of doing that, you could just, I don't know where you stack your investments tracking, if it's a Google Sheets or a whatever, just add up a column which is Bitcoin ROI, or Bitcoin percentage returns of those investments, and I think you'll start to see things differently, honestly.
It's very, very true. So I know Roxom is obviously, maybe it's worthwhile just before we let you go here, giving an overview of kind of, for those who are not familiar, obviously oil Bitcoin was just rolled out, but Roxom has a whole lot of other pairs Bitcoin denominated. That's the whole point of Roxom. Can you maybe just give an overview for folks who are just tuning in now, haven't heard about what Roxom is doing. Obviously, this is Roxom TV, but Roxom, the parent company, kind of what you guys are doing there and what else is available, just for people who are tuning in who may not have heard about it before.
Yeah, for sure. As a quick review, we have our spot markets where you can trade US equities, so stocks, bonds, ETFs, everything in Bitcoin, With Bitcoin, you can buy any of those stocks, ETFs, and bonds as an easy one-click trade. Then we have our futures, which is what we've been talking more, our perpetual futures, 24/7 live. We have there gold against Bitcoin, the US 500 against Bitcoin, USDT against Bitcoin, and we just launched today oil against Bitcoin. And then we have just launched a trade, which is basically you can buy stretch to earn the stretch is the stock preferred of MicroStrategy or Strategy Now, in case folks out there missed it, and you can earn the dividends, which are now at 11.5% yearly, which is pretty interesting. You can earn them in Bitcoin. So that's the new product we launched.
I love it. And Luke, I always appreciate you tuning in, jumping on here with us, talking to us non-traders, and probably a lot of actual traders in the audience. But appreciate you sharing your time. Where can folks follow you? And then also just if they want to try out Roxom in terms of the platform itself, where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, we will be waiting you. More than happy to listen to feedback and everything at roxom.com. And I'll be navigating volatility with you folks at Look at Roxom.
Fantastic. Well, Luca, thank you so much for joining. Always fascinating. I get a little bit more bullish just generally every time that we talk. So appreciate you sharing your time with us here today. And guys, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back with a little bit more news here on Roxom. We've also got Nico from Simply Bitcoin joining us in about 30 minutes. That should be a great time. As always, he's another one who is guaranteed to make you more bullish and probably treat us to some excellent rants along the way. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back here on Roxom TV with more.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
Still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to Roxom TV. I'm Walker America, here with you every Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Roxom TV. The price of Bitcoin is $69,169 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. We're going to get into a couple other stories here. First up, President Trump is telling Senate Republicans that there will be no DHS deal unless Democrats pass the SAVE Act, the voter ID bill that has already failed a Senate vote last week. This as Senate leadership prepares to leave for a 2-week break on Friday. Boy, they sure do take a lot of breaks. Meanwhile, TSA is losing officers by the day. 400 have quit. Call-out rates are above 50% at some airports. And ICE agents are being deployed to checkpoints. The acting TSA deputy administrator has warned smaller airports could close entirely if the situation doesn't improve before the next pay cycle. Trump is now using the airport crisis as political leverage for an unrelated election bill. The shutdown has hit its 40th day Friday, and every day Congress is in recess is another day TSA can't pay its people. Next, today in a federal judge is hearing Anthropic's request for a preliminary injunction over a Pentagon, quote, supply chain risk designation. That label has historically been used for foreign adversaries like Huawei, not domestic companies, which is why this case is drawing so much scrutiny. Anthropic argues the designation is being used as leverage in a contract dispute, while the government has not committed to avoiding further action before trial. Microsoft and 22 retired military chiefs have filed in support of Anthropic, adding significant pressure to the situation. The hearing was fast-tracked, and a ruling is expected in the coming days. What's at stake here now is how far the government can go in labeling domestic companies as security risks, because that kind of authority, once expanded, tends to shape how entire industries operate going forward. Next up, there was an excellent article put out by River CTO Alex Leishman, CEO and CTO. He can walk and chew gum at the same time. He's been here on RoxomTV with us before. Great guy. And River, for those who don't know, is a Bitcoin-only exchange, not sponsored by River, but they are the ones that I personally use. I recommend them to my mom and anyone who asks. But I want to dive into this article a little bit. It's a short article. I'll read it to you guys, and then I'll give you some thoughts on it because I think this was really well timed and just a really important piece by Alex here. So the article is titled, "You Were Promised a Financial Revolution, You Got a Casino in Your Pocket." The 2008 financial crisis led to a new wave of fintech startups. These companies democratized access to finance and inspired the hope of economic freedom for all. But before this fintech revolution, wealth management was for the wealthy. Brokerage accounts came with high fees and minimums. Roughly 20% of Americans were underbanked. Fintech solved these problems. Robinhood onboarded a new generation of stock investors. Coinbase made Bitcoin easy for Americans. Cash App and Venmo popularized peer-to-peer payments. And neobanks onboarded underserved populations. But nearly 2 decades later, fintech apps are looking more like casinos than tools for building wealth. As a fintech founder, I have to ask, are we going in the right direction? Apps that help you invest and save are now pushing meme coin trading, sports betting, and complex derivatives. The finance app has morphed into a casino in your pocket. Open Robinhood today and you're encouraged to bet on March Madness. On Coinbase, you're marketed Pepe coin and derivatives offering 10x leverage. I'm not saying there isn't a place for gambling. It simply should not be disguised as wealth building. Caesar's Palace doesn't pretend to have a mission to help you save for retirement. It's entertainment, not investing. This unholy union between fintech and gambling is happening because companies are prioritizing profits over principles. There is a cost. Most people are worse off when using these products. A 2023 study found that 97% of people trading futures lose money. A typical retail investor loses 5 to 9% each time they trade an options contract. When sports betting is legalized in a new state, personal bankruptcies increase by 25% within a few years. The cultural impacts are equally concerning. Calls to the National Gambling Hotline have skyrocketed in the last 2 years. Google searches for child gambling have hit an all-time high. Much of this growth is attributable to the gamification of financial products. And here you'll see a couple of charts that Alex put together here. And this is just wild as a side note to see this rise, searches for child gambling just here in the last couple of years. He goes on to say, the cost will one day be felt by the companies themselves. You can only sell products that make your users poorer for so long. Eventually, people resent these apps and governments increase regulation. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can change the trajectory of finance. My ask to founders is to go back to your original mission statements. Make finance easier and more useful for people. Provide long-term value to your users instead of pushing short-term predatory products. Maximize shareholder value for the years ahead, not next quarter's earnings call. I'm proposing a simple guiding principle for our industry. Do not push financial products you would not want your family to use. The same way social media execs don't let their kids use TikTok, don't build something you know does more harm than good. We've been given the opportunity to improve the financial trajectory of hundreds of millions of Americans. Let's do that. Okay, so I think this is an outstanding and very concise article by Alex here. And really, this is something that he actually talked about the last time he came and joined me here on Roxom. This idea that all of these, if you open up any of the either Robinhood or any of the Coinbase, any of the crypto trading apps, the first thing you see now is, hey, do you want to basically trade on prediction markets? But the prediction markets just so happen to be like 80 to 90% sports betting, right? And it's a way to circumvent sports betting laws in various states. And I think the really insidious thing here is exactly what Alex said, where they're somehow disguising this gambling, which again, you want to gamble, that's fine. But what I think is insidious and generally harmful is trying to wrap this up like it is this financial liberation, like somehow, getting on prediction markets on Kalshi or Coinbase or wherever, or Robinhood, is somehow making you more financially free. Like, odds are you're going to lose money. We've also seen how much insider manipulation there is at all sorts of levels in a lot of these prediction markets. And so I think it's really important now more than ever for us as Bitcoiners to make sure we drill home that message of, look, if you want to save, if you want to build wealth slowly, Bitcoin isn't a get rich quick scheme. It's a save wealth slowly. It's a don't get wrecked plan, right? Bitcoin is how you save for the long term. It is how you protect the value of the time and energy that you put into work day after day for the future. And I think what a lot of these, another great point that I love about that Alex made in here is that the cost is ultimately going to be felt by these companies, because if you're just making all your users poorer, well, they're just going to stop using it eventually. You're going to run out of people to basically wreck. And you already saw that. If we think back to the Super Bowl and the reaction to the Coinbase ad, it's everybody. Yeah. Okay. Everybody loved that until the Coinbase logo came up on screen, right? Excuse my singing there, guys. My voice is a little bit rough here, but it's rough always when it comes to singing. But you saw the Coinbase logo come up and people were pissed, right? It was like, oh, come on. Because why? Well, they associate, especially during the Super Bowl, if we remember back to the FTX days when they bought up a bunch of Super Bowl ad time, when Coinbase, all the big crypto companies had Super Bowl ad time, prime time slots, the most expensive you can get. And people have that memory in their head of maybe getting in and starting to buy some various crypto assets. Maybe they went in thinking they were going to buy Bitcoin, but then they saw the 14,000 other options listed on the exchange, bought some shitcoin. It went to zero. They got wrecked. They feel spurned. They feel like they got screwed somehow. And ultimately they end up just not using that product or hating that product. And so these companies, I think it's very short-sighted. Ultimately, sure, are they probably making more money right now than they would be if like these were just companies we're doing like River's doing? Like, I've talked to Alex about this. He's like, yeah, sure, we could be making more money in the short term by offering all these shit coins or offering all these different, prediction market contracts or offering futures, offering whatever. But they're not thinking in the short term. The thinking in the short term is a very fiat mentality, right? You're thinking, how am I going to make a buck right now? A lot of it also, of course, is a function of being a publicly traded company, needing to show that growth, needing to show investors, look, here's our plan. We want keep buying our stock, keep pumping it up. Look at this nice plan that we have, and look how much we're growing quarter over quarter, year over year. So a lot of it is a function of that, right? The purpose of the system is what it does. But I think there is something deeper there. I think there's something deeper there where you get these sort of Weimar type vibes. And that's something that's thrown around a lot, right? Where people turn to degeneracy, they turn to gambling, they turn to debauchery when the money breaks. But it's sort of a cliche, or it's a trope even, for a reason. It's because that's what happens throughout history. It's what, to take a few key examples, it's what happened in Rome. It's what happened leading up to the French Revolution. It's like the French Revolution didn't just pop off out of nowhere. They weren't all of a sudden like, hey, you know what? We should just start. So suddenly we just don't have any food. And all these rich people out there eating cake, we should just start beheading them. It's like, no, what happened? Well, they started debasing the assignat. They started debasing their currency, right? Like, that's what happened first. In Rome, the denarius, they were debasing the currency, quite literally debasing the coinage. Weimar Germany, same thing. And like, what happens after that? Well, you've got the fall of Rome, you've got the French Revolution, and you've got the Nazis. Like that's what, just in those three examples, that's what happens after you have a money that breaks. Because when the money breaks, society breaks with it. Money is upstream of everything else in society, right? If you have a sound money, if you have a hard money, you've got a sound society. You're building on a foundation of bedrock. With fiat, you're building on this foundation of quicksand. And there's a reason that us Bitcoiners repeat these things over and over and over and over again. And maybe if you've heard this show before, you've heard my show before, you're thinking, come on, Walker, change the record. But you know what? Not everyone has heard this message. Because if everyone had heard this message, we would have so many more people who would have adopted Bitcoin right now. But the reality is that most people still haven't heard this message because most people are just trying to get by. And you can't blame them. It's getting harder and harder to get by every single day, every single week, month, year after year. It is getting harder to get by. For younger generations especially, there's a reason that depression and nihilism are on the rise, right? It's because people, especially young people, feel that you don't have a fighting chance to get ahead. It's not like the boomers where you could buy your house for a bushel of raspberries, right? And now it's worth a couple million and you can, sit back. You've got a couple of them. You're sitting pretty. It's not the boomers' fault they were born when they were, right? But, it's not anyone else's fault. You were born right now. Whether you were born, when I was as a millennial, whether you're born as a Zoomer or Gen Alpha, right? The point is that when the money breaks, everything else downstream breaks as well. People trend towards degeneracy. They trend towards gambling. And gambling itself is like, think what you want about it, right? I don't care what you do with your money. Do whatever you want with your money. Personally, like if I go and I gamble, I'll bring like $100 with me. That's my entertainment budget for the night. Maybe I'll play a little roulette, a little blackjack. I'll plan on losing that money. If I don't, okay, great. That's fantastic. I didn't lose it, but I'm planning on it because I'm not using that as a way to invest. I'm not using that as my plan for how to get ahead, for how to get rich. That's entertainment. And I think Alex called that out directly in this. Caesar's Palace isn't going around saying, look, sit at the craps table. That's your 401k plan. No. When the money breaks, I'll repeat this again, everything else downstream in society breaks with it. This is why we see all of these different crypto casino apps turning into just actual casinos, just sports betting casinos, just prediction market casinos, right? It's because I think also the other side to this that Alex doesn't touch on here, but I talked about with him a little bit as well. These crypto casino apps know that the crypto game is sort of up, right? They're running out of suckers to come in and be exit liquidity for all of these meme coins, all of these shit coins, all of these, blue chip crypto projects. They're running out of exit liquidity. They're realizing that, like this game has kind of run its course. People kind of know this whole crypto thing has just been a massive, massive unmitigated scam, right? Unfortunately, it's been lumped in with Bitcoin. That's done a lot of damage, I think, to Bitcoin adoption, but hopefully it's also brought a lot of people around who got screwed by crypto and then came to Bitcoin later. But the point being, these crypto casinos, they know the gig is up, right? They know that they're in a time right now where if they do not pivot, if they don't find a new way to lure new suckers in, they're going to see all of their volume collapse. They'll probably still see Bitcoin volume, but all their crypto volume is going to collapse. And I think it already is. And that's why you've seen them all pivot basically at the exact same time to start offering these prediction market contracts, which is just sports betting. It's just gambling by a different name. Again, do what you want with your money. I don't care if you gamble. I don't care if you sports bet. It's your money. You use it when you need it. That's probably a reference that's a little too old for most folks there. Old infomercial. Anyway, I'm dating myself. The point here is this. Focusing on focusing on Bitcoin, focusing on why Bitcoin is important, focusing on the fact that, Bitcoin's not going to make you rich overnight. Maybe it makes you feel poorer overnight. Maybe it makes you feel poorer on a couple of weeks or a couple of months or even a couple of years. But you save in Bitcoin. You DCA in like I do. You heard me talking to Luca earlier. I'm not a trader, right? I don't pretend to be. Sometimes I do a little trading just to remind myself what a bad trader I am. What I am, though, thanks to Bitcoin, I'm a good saver. So I save the value of my time and energy. I save the value of my work in something I know cannot be debased. I save the value of my time and energy in something I know cannot be rugged. I save the value of my time and energy in something that is predictable in the long term because I'm thinking in the long term. All of these other crypto casinos, every crypto asset out there, every meme coin, every shit coin, it's all the same things, right? They're all shit coins, right? But all these prediction markets, all these things, these are short-term fiat things. They're fiat on steroids. This is what late-stage fiat vibes look like. I'm going to talk with our next guest here, Nico Moran, about this a little bit in the coming segment here in just a few minutes. But I really wanted to drill this home is that it is so important for us now more than ever to educate yourself if you're not. But if you are, if you're awake, if you're watching this right now, if you're nodding your head saying, hell yeah, brother, right on. Okay, great. Take care of your family next. Make sure that your family is aware of this. Make sure that your family doesn't get sucked into these scams because it's easy to, right? It's easy to when you feel like you don't have another way to get ahead. Take care of your friends next. Focus on what you can control the most, which is your inner circle, your immediate family, your extended family, your friends, maybe your neighbors, right? Doesn't mean you have to evangelize everyone. Just means you have to be there. You just have to be there to be able to answer questions, or if you hear people talking about this stuff, to be able to provide an alternate opinion, to say, like what is all this gambling telling us? What is this a sign of? Is this a sign of a deeper problem? Because again, the gambling, the prediction markets, all of this, that's not the source of the problem, right? That's not the disease. The disease is that the money is broken and dying. It's dying slowly. Again, the dollar is the skinniest kid at fat camp. It's the prettiest horse at the glue factory. Dollar's probably gonna die a slow death last. But all fiat currencies eventually go to their marginal cost of production, which is zero. Zero. It costs nothing to make a few keystrokes, to print out a few more billion out of nothing, to fund a war or a sparkling conflict that nobody seems to want, right? They're all going to go to their marginal cost of production, which is zero. The question is, are you going to be left holding one of these fiat bags? Are you going to be left trading into oblivion, just trying to, eke out some sort of small return? Maybe you're going to be one of the few percentages of people that actually ends up, coming out ahead on options contracts, or coming out ahead on futures contracts, or coming out ahead on prediction markets. Maybe you're an insider and you've got access to material non-public information. Maybe you're a member of Congress and you can insider trade on stocks, right? Great. That's good for you. I think you should probably be put on trial for that, but that's a different story for a different day. The point here is that it's never been more important to focus on the why of Bitcoin, the why. And that is to escape the manipulation, to be able to save in something that's predictable, to be able to save in something that's fair, and to be able to think long term. All of these fiat games, all of this crypto shitcoin stuff, all of these prediction markets, they are all short-term fiat on steroids thinking. We need to be able to zoom out. We need to be able to think long term. Bitcoin is what allows you to do that. When you use Bitcoin as your store of value, maybe as a medium of exchange too, I try to as much as I can. When you use Bitcoin then as your unit of account on top of that, you start to see things differently. And those progressions happen at different times for different people. But it is a mentality shift that really helps you. It will help your family in the long term. Again, yeah, it may be painful, especially as Bitcoin's crabbing along sideways, but view this as a golden opportunity, an opportunity to stack sats cheaper than you could, a few months ago or a year ago, right? I didn't think we'd have such a golden opportunity, but we do. Bitcoin sitting at 69,429 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. The reason I say Federal Reserve notes is because that's who issues our money, right? Yeah, the Treasury, da-da-da. Okay. Yeah, but the point is that it's all, right, going back to Big Daddy Federal Reserve, right? An unelected group of banker bureaucrats that gets to set the price of money. It gets to set the interest rate. It gets to decide how much money is juiced into the economy at any given time. You can play by their game, and you're going to lose unless you're one of the very, very few, one of the cantillionaires up at the top who's closest to the spigot of money. Then you're going to do just fine, like you always have throughout all of history. If you're close to the creation of new money, you've always been okay. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who are like me, who are way downstream of that, right? Who are way downstream of this trickle-down monetary policy. Forget trickle-down economics. Real trickle-down is trickle-down monetary policy. And unless you are one of the very few insiders, way, way, way up at the tippity top, you get shafted by it. And so what can you do? Save in something that they can't manipulate. Save in something they can't debase. Save in something that they can't print more of when there's a new war or a new crisis or a new problem that they've manufactured out of thin air. There's always going to be more crises. There's always going to be more wars. There's always going to be more problems, whether real or fabricated. But Bitcoin doesn't care. TikTok, next block. Bitcoin just keeps going. and you can get a piece of the only completely finite, absolutely finite pie in the world, in the galaxy that we know of. Perhaps not in the universe. I'm sure that there's extraterrestrials out there who have also, caught on to Bitcoin. Maybe that's why they're visiting us with increased frequency now, because they realize, well, this must be a sufficiently advanced civilization. They finally figured out energy money. They finally figured out Bitcoin. Maybe there's hope for them after all. And there is hope for you. All you have to do is opt in. And if you're going to opt in, don't opt in through a shitcoin casino. Use something else. So shout out to Alex Leishman of River. Thought this was a great and well put article here. I think we need more of this kind of energy, and more of this kind of energy from fintech founders as well. You can make money and do it in a way that doesn't harm people. It is possible. Fiat has kind of conditioned us to believe otherwise, but it need not be the case. You need not make money on the backs of your users. You need not screw your users over and lead them to poisoned wells in order for you yourself to drink clean water, right? You can just make a good product or sell a good product like Bitcoin and do right by your users. So shout out to the fintech founders, the Bitcoin only founders out there who are doing exactly that. Okay, we are going to run to a quick commercial break, guys. When we come back here, you're going to hear me ranting a little bit more, and then we're going to have Nico from Simply Bitcoin come on. He may be the king of rants. We're going to see, last time I talked to Nico, he was on the fence about whether he was bearish, bullish, somewhere in between. There may or may not be a pie in the face contract that, probably it's on a prediction market somewhere now, whether Opti and I are going to pie Nico in the face at some point. Let's see. If there is, please don't bet on it. Or do if you want. I don't care. Bitcoin doesn't care, but make sure you're at least stacking some sats along the way. Okay, we'll be right back here on RoxomTV with me, Walker America. Do not touch that dial. We'll see you in just a sec.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
No! Bitcoin! Come on, little buddy! Bitcoin! I need you! Don't go!
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about Stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young, Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
We are in heaven at 11.5.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV, everyone. My name is Walker America. I am here with you every Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on RoxomTV. And now it is my pleasure to say yo and welcome to Nico Marin, the host of Simply Bitcoin. Nico, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yo, dude, great to see you as well, man. Super hyped to be here, man. Always great to see you, Walker. Your vibes, your energy, your takes, always incredible.
Well, it's always hard to match the energy and the vibe that you bring just with that single word, just that yo at the start. It's hard. It's unmatched. Nobody does it better. But so Nico, I'm stoked to have you here. Always love to get a vibe check from you. I think last time we checked was actually, or last time we talked was actually on your show. I think it was you, me, and Opti, and we were talking about maybe pieing you in the face if Bitcoin, because Opti and I were feeling very bullish. You were kind of like, I don't know, guys. I think we're gonna kind of mellow out here for a while. It looks like so far you're not getting pied. It looks like so far you've been kind of right on your vibe check. Where is your vibe sitting right now in terms of Bitcoin sitting just under? We're at about 69K, nice. But if we look at what Bitcoin's done since like the start of the Iran war, where gold was pretty much ripping up into that, Bitcoin was dipping. Now Bitcoin versus gold, we've seen it's up like 25, 30%. Bitcoin's looking pretty good. It's holding up surprisingly well during this whole, sparkling conflict in the Middle East, a new flavor of it. What's your read in the situation right now? Are you still kind of in a wait and see mode, or are you starting to feel the tinglings of bullishness coming back again?
Well, I gotta say, bro, vindication, man. Like, I had my co-host and Walker come on the show and just ambush me, and say, Nico, we're gonna pie you in the face. You got this wrong. And I gotta say, I called it. I told you so. No, but
credit where credit is due.
In all seriousness, like, the way that I'm seeing this is the 4-year cycle's intact until it's not intact. And right now, the 4-year cycle has been playing out perfectly. We topped out exactly where the 4-year cycle would top out. And this bear trend that we've been kind of living through these last couple of months has been playing out exactly like every single previous bear cycle. So, are we going to see a final capitulation? Perhaps. I mean, things have changed a little bit, right? And the reason I'm saying that is the amount of Bitcoin that Michael Saylor is buying and the amount of Bitcoin, like, for example, with just the stretch product alone, like, they're buying more Bitcoin on a daily basis that is actively being mined on a weekly basis. And that's just one product. Right? So eventually in my mind, I'm like, look, like, eventually we're going to get to a point where the market's going to discover there's 25 million Bitcoin, or we're going to get to a point where there's going to be a supply shock, right? So I don't know if, and again, The 4-year cycle is intact until it's not. I don't know if we're going to see a traditional 70% downturn. We could, but I don't know if we're going to see that just based on the amount of Bitcoin that's actively being bought right now, just by one company. This isn't even talking about the sovereign wealth funds. This isn't talking about the other Bitcoin treasury companies. This isn't talking about the U.S. government potentially buying Bitcoin. Not talking about any of that. Just this one company alone is buying more of the Bitcoin supply that is actively being mined. So eventually what happens? Number goes up, or the market discovers, wait a second, there's 25 million Bitcoin, but there's only 21 million Bitcoin. What's going on? And that's going to lead to a supply shock, because that's just going to lead to a bankrupt. Now, to weave back in your original question regarding the Iran war situation, I'm surprised how much Bitcoin held up despite the current geopolitical atmosphere. Because I mean, like the Strait of Hormuz situation, and I mispronounced that last part, so ignore it, but you guys get the gist of it, is really bad. Like, it's really, really bad. Right. Like, and I think the whole thing was miscalculated. Right. Like, you know, the strongest military on planet Earth, which it really is, you know, basically take out the Iranian leadership. And basically they said, like, I don't really care. We can just make these like $30,000 drones, and we can just keep droning all your allies in the region. And, you know, it was a giant miscalculation. And also too, man, like, from someone who voted for Trump, and I was very bullish on his administration, and he did do a lot of good things for Bitcoin. He ultimately did free Ross Ulbricht. You know, it's more positive from a regulatory environment, even though I do believe if cackling Kamala got into office, I think we'd be at 300K by now. But besides that, you know, you could make the argument that as a Bitcoiner, Trump is a net positive. Man, did he betray his base. Like, this is a guy who ran on drain the swamp, no more endless wars, and 1 year into his second term, I mean, like, you couldn't have put together a better team to drain the swamp if you wanted to. And I don't know what the swamp does, but they just like hijacked him or his brain or blackmailed him or threatened him. And then all of a sudden he becomes George W. Bush 2.0. Like, it's crazy how that happens. And, you know, for me, this has just made me come full circle, Walker, where like basically at this point, I'm right where you are, which is like, there's no team blue, there's no team red, there's the state, and there is you. I'm at that point as a Bitcoiner. Like, I've lost every semblance of hope for politics. I think the only way we're going to ever get out of this is via Bitcoin. Like, I just don't think that system is ever going to change. And the least of which is it going to change from the inside. I think this has to be, if we have any semblance of hope of the system changing, it has to be an outside political movement that doesn't rely on the system at all, because I think the system is co-opted 100%, and it's funded by the money printer. I've just come to that conclusion that there's no way. There's no way, man. So that's where my head's at. I hope that answers your question. I forgot your original question. I'm just really bullish to be with you, bro, and to see you.
Right back at you, brother. No, I think, you know, I forgot my original question too. It was generally a vibes check, but I think you've answered the question of where your vibe is at right now. And I think this is a fair point. This is, in my mind, you've been in Bitcoin longer than I have. You've been doing Bitcoin media as well for longer than most people have been aware of Bitcoin. You've been putting out incredible stuff with Simply Bitcoin. You guys crank it out every single day, right? So you've had your finger on this pulse for so long. You've gone on your own journey too, right? And I think, I don't know about you, but it seems like at a certain point, we all, after just like, you look at this stuff enough, you look at the corruption enough, you look at all the fraud, you know, fraud, waste, and abuse, whatever you want to call it. But like, it's not just in Democrat cities. It's not just in the US. It's everywhere that fiat touches, right? It's everywhere. You come to this point where you say, well, how can we ever vote our way out of this? Like, any vote within this system just is a vote for the system to keep perpetuating itself. And I think, I'd love your take on this, because I think a lot of people, they hear that and they say, well, this is just you as a, crazy libertarian, anarcho-capitalist Bitcoiner. You're being unrealistic. You know, we have to be prudent. We have to, of course you can vote your way out of this. We just have to get the right people in charge, and then everything will be all set and it'll be fine, and we'll get out of this in one piece. What do you say to those people who say this is just some pie in the sky libertarian, libertarian fantasy? You still have to operate within the system. That's the only way to fix it. We have to work from the inside. We can't just expect the money, fixing the money to fix all of this. That's just like childish, because I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah, I mean, like it's essentially like what I've come to realize is that the election process is just a pressure release valve so that people think that they have control over their country's destiny. But in reality, I think what we've come to learn, and it's been extremely revealing this last decade, like what we've come to learn about the legacy media, what we've come to learn about our politics, where you had a supposed outsider come in. You can say that the 2020 election was questionable. And then he made this historical comeback. I mean, the epic picture of his fists in the air, the bullet grazed his ear. He started bleeding. And you were thinking like, look, the system is fighting him. And he even said when he survived the assassination attempt, fight, 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 fight. And then he goes. And then I think the first couple of months in his administration were looking very optimistic. You had Doge in there, like finding all this crazy, government spending that like it's crazy that we pay all these taxes, but the government has no accountability in terms of what they do with the tax revenue itself. Like, it blows my mind that you had a 21-year-old kid that was doing more investigative journalism that actually led to some type of legal investigation. Of course, I'm talking about the child care situation in Wisconsin. And then, the traditional media companies,
Minnesota,
right?
Minnesota.
It was Minnesota. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's not
guys.
rag on cheeseheads like that. Although I'm sure there's plenty of fraud there too.
Sorry, guys. I'm a Florida man. So forgive me for that. But again, that blows my mind. It blows my mind, right? But it's also extremely revealing, right? So I've come essentially full circle at this point where, like, I don't think you can change the system. I don't think you can change it. I think there's something there that essentially, even if you're this very moral, ethical, big hopes and dreams type of president that gets elected, I think the moment that you get elected, they take you into a room and they basically tell you, listen, this is how it goes. We'll let you get away with some things, but the general direction is this way. I don't think that the United States is a government by the people for the people. I think it's a government by the government for the government. I think the United States is run by the unelected bureaucracy. Some people call it the administrative state. And this administrative state is funded by the money printer. And because it's funded by the money printer and it's not funded by tax revenue, even though that's the perception of it, the government spends $2 trillion on average more than it collects in tax revenue on a yearly basis. How do they make up the difference? They print the difference. So you have this unaccountable, this unelected bureaucracy that remains in power regardless of who gets elected. I think they're the ones who really control the country, who really set the agenda. The elections function as a pressure release valve. They try to convince the country, oh, you do have control over your destiny. But in reality, judge the tree by its fruits. Like, we're now again involved in another endless war in the Middle East. It's crazy. We've literally been living this movie for like 30, 40 years. And it doesn't change. So you got to ask yourself, what's going on here? So if you're a normie and you're listening to this, you got to get your head out of your ass, because things are not changing. Things remain the same. If you're in the younger generations, you're poorer than your parents. You can't afford housing, right? You can't afford rent. You can't afford food. Everything's getting progressively more expensive. Going back to, we were talking about before we went on air, Leishman, and how essentially society has been, has been venturing into like this short-term thinking type of gambling behavior, that's because of the nihilism that it literally comes because of fiat. Like fiat takes away your future, it steals your future, even though you might not be aware that you're being stolen from, even though you might like not be completely aware that you're essentially your bank account is being drained. Like, and that's the sinister part. Like that $100 in your bank account, yes, it might say $100, but what most people fail to realize is what is the purchasing power of that $100, and it continues to decrease day after day. This is why Bitcoin is such a game changer, right? You switch to a Bitcoin standard, and all of a sudden, wait, you start caring about your health, you stop gambling, you start thinking about the future, you start having kids. How crazy is that, right? How many Bitcoiners that you know have they have big families. They're optimistic about the future. They want to have children. I talk to my friends that are not in the industry. Again, not to name any names. I love all these people. Man, they're getting into their mid to late 30s and they're still discussing, oh, maybe we should get married, maybe we should have kids. The reason for that is because everything is so goddamn expensive, right? And that wasn't the case 50 years ago. That wasn't the case 40 years ago. That wasn't the case 30 years ago. I think people underestimate how much of an influence money plays in society. It is the base layer of society. And if the base layer of society is fundamentally corrupted to the core, there are unintended consequences of that. And I think people are starting to feel that. Now, the good news about all of this, because this has been slightly pessimistic, slightly negative. The good news about this, and I tweeted this out a couple days ago, I said the most important vote you can make this midterm year is taking Bitcoin into self-custody. Right? You can opt out of this bullshit today. You don't have to participate. Bitcoin doesn't need a politician or a president for you to start using it today and for you to start benefiting from it today. If you switch to a Bitcoin standard and you denominate your net worth in Bitcoin, life will get progressively cheaper for you over time. Therefore, you're allowed to dream about the future, to plan for the future. And if you start dreaming and planning for the future, you say, oh, you know what? Having a kid, we could actually do it. It would be affordable. Maybe we might have to save a little bit now, but I know that in 4 years, my net worth is probably going to be higher because my savings are in Bitcoin, right? Imagine if the whole world thought like that. I think a lot of the violence and a lot of the nihilism we see in the world today is due to fiat, is due to people having zero hope for the future and the despair that comes with it.
Well, I'd just like to say, man, I missed your rants, Nico. Always good to be in the digital room for one versus just watching you on screen. And I think you're spot on. And like the last thing you said is actually so important. This idea of how we can see, like we've seen what fiat has done to society, right? The purpose of a system is what it does. We've seen how it has just degraded every aspect, how it's made people put off having kids for longer and longer. And maybe everyone's different, right? There's a right time for everyone. Maybe there's never a right time. It reminds me of the start of Idiocracy, which I rewatched again recently. And I was like, hadn't seen it in a few years. And I was like, boy, this keeps getting scarier and scarier each time I watch it. But at the start, I'm just reminded of that couple, the high IQ couple who's like, well, we can't possibly have a kid right now with the market the way it is. They end up just like, never having kids, like whatever. And I digress. The point being, you look at this fiat system, you look at the fact that it's forced everyone to think about tomorrow. Just how do I get by? Just how do I scrape together enough to stay on the hamster wheel, to keep up with the Joneses, to try, if I have a family, to keep providing for them as best I can. You can't get ahead, especially the younger generations. Like the boomers, it's not their fault they were born into the easiest money period in history, but man, did they benefit from it, right? Not their fault. None of us can choose when we were born, where we were born, any of that. Just like the folks, you and I as millennials or people, even the Gen Xers, we forget about them sometimes, but we see you Gen Xers. But the Zoomers and the Gen Alpha now too, you and I both have young kids. And I think about it, it's like, there is really kind of only one beacon of hope out there if you're trying to actually think long term. Because if you're thinking in the fiat system, if you're going back to Leishman's piece about just the gamification of everything, it's like if you're only thinking about how do I just eke out a little bit, how do I just get ahead for tomorrow, you're never going to be thinking long-term enough to actually build something, to actually build a family. And I think that's like, it's a shift that, as you mentioned, you see it amongst folks in the Bitcoin space. You see them starting to have kids, having more kids, having bigger families, really focusing on community at a local level too. And you start to wonder, we start to sound like these starry-eyed dreamers, but it's like, why not dream? Why not imagine how much better the world could be when more people move their time and energy over to a fair system, over to a system that's not just designed to steal from you? And it's like, personally, I look at that and I think just in the microcosm that we're able to observe through our circles, right? And I'm sure folks listening out there who are, have moved to a Bitcoin standard, who have their families on a Bitcoin standard, who know others on a Bitcoin standard. This is why going to conferences is so great too, just to like, hey, even if you don't go and attend every talk, just to get there with fellow Bitcoiners, be there in the meet space, realize you're not crazy, you're not alone. Like the system's crazy, you're not crazy. But this idea of how much better can things get as more and more people start moving over? Because back to your original point, I don't think the system fixes itself. I don't think we vote our way out of this. And we know that the system's not going to fix itself. The system, like Lynn Alden says, nothing stops this train, right? The system can't fix itself. It's irreparably broken. It may slow down that train a little bit at times, but the train's just going to keep on rolling. And the only option you have is to get on a different track, right? Get on a different track that's a little bit more predictable, where you can actually plan for the future, where you can think long term. Because otherwise you are just on that hamster wheel and you will never get off. And I think that's why we see so much, as you mentioned, so much of this nihilism, so much depression permeating everything. You can't blame, millennials were in an interesting spot, right? We sort of, we remember even, we remember dial-up, right? We remember the robot noises as we logged on the internet, right? We remember when things buffered. We remember the pre-digital ubiquity age. And now we've seen the other side of it. For kids that are just coming up now, who are just starting to enter the workforce, or even for our kids where it's like they're young, right? They're toddlers and newborns. It's like, what is the world going to look like for them? What type of world do we want to leave for them when they're, entering the workforce? Nothing's going to look the same as it is now. Look at the rate of change that we're seeing. Personally, I think that probably the only way, unless you're already a cantillionaire, right? Unless you're already next to the money printer, you're going to be fine if you are, right? You've always benefited from it. You're going to be fine. But for the 99.99% of the rest of us, you have kind of one exit path. You have one lifeboat. And it's why I think we have to keep beating this drum. Because clearly, like, people might say, oh, the Bitcoiners, so repetitive with these same things. It's like, well, because 99% of the world still doesn't get it. Like, we have to keep being repetitive. You know what I mean? If the job was done, maybe we could sit back and relax. But we have so much more work to do, I think. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know when that equation flips, but I think it's still going to take a long time. But maybe it's accelerating. It feels like it might be.
Yeah, I think we're at this moment right now where essentially I think we're crossing the chasm. I think Bitcoin is maturing in the sense that I think now it's becoming it went from early adopters to now I think it's seeing the early innings of the early majority phase, right? I think that's where we are. And I think that Saylor, with what he's doing with strategy and STRC, are really kind of like it's really the testing bed and kind of like the if it works, right? Because like if you take a look at what Saylor's doing, he's doing basically the exact same thing that all of us have done. The only difference between Saylor and the rest of us is that he's able to leverage his company and his wealth to essentially, borrow money or raise money to buy more Bitcoin. But essentially, on a fundamental level, he's doing the exact same thing. And what is that? He's going 100% into Bitcoin. That's all. Every single one of us has done that at this point, right? You get to a point where you're like, okay, I'll buy a little bit and whatever. Then you get addicted. Then you start asking questions about money. And then you're like, F the Fed. And then you just become a full-fledged Bitcoiner. Saylor is doing the exact same thing, but he's doing it with a lot more eyes because there's a lot more money involved. And also he's doing it on Wall Street. So once Saylor proves himself, right? Once strategy stock is in the thousands, right? Once STRC is around for a decade, maybe 2 decades, it's going to be unquestionable that Bitcoin, not only is it here to stay, it is the superior asset that we all say it is. And at that point, if you're Microsoft, if you're Meta, if you're any of these companies that, are a little bit conservative with their treasuries and stuff like that, you're not going to have a choice but to have Bitcoin on your balance sheet, right? And what he's doing with STRC, going after the fixed income markets. I mean, if you look at the treasuries, right, they're between 3.5 and 4.5 or 4.5. He's offering 11.5. Even if you're a real estate investor, on a good year, you're going to get between an 8 to 10% return. That's not counting the taxes, the maintenance, the vacancy. And Saylor's basically coming up to you and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to give you an 11% return. An 11% return. You don't have to do anything. Nothing. Just park your money. I'm going to give you 11%. And the only reason this is even possible, and it sounds too good to be true, but the only reason that he's able to pull this, the only reason he's able to pull this off is if Bitcoin maintains a 30 to 20% CAGR for the next 10, 15 years. If it is, not only is STRC viable, it becomes the best fixed income product in the world. So if you're, a fixed income investor, or if you have your money in treasuries, and STRC is around for a decade, are you going to leave your money in treasuries? Are you gonna continue doing the real estate investment? Are you gonna continue, chasing these other fixed income products or the other investing? If all you have to do is put your money in STRC and get a guaranteed 11% return. Like it's the iPhone moment, essentially, for Bitcoin on Wall Street. Like, I don't think people understand how consequential this product is, but it all depends on whether Bitcoin is going to perform. Because if Bitcoin does not at least, give a 15 to 20 to 25 to 30% return for the next, 10, 15 years, then STRC isn't viable. It isn't a viable product that he's offering, right? But let's say Bitcoin does give that type of return. Like, the world's going to change. And Saylor right now, and Strategy and STRC, the way they're positioning themselves, if Saylor gets this right, he's going to be one of the wealthiest mans on planet Earth. Strategy is going to be one of the most, one of the most valuable companies on planet Earth. He is really going all in. But the question I have for all you guys is that any different than the rest of us? We just don't have a multi-billion-dollar company behind us. We just don't have 20 years of experience in the traditional markets. But he's doing the exact same thing that the rest of us have done. Have you not borrowed money from your mom? Have you not borrowed money from your parents? Have you not borrowed money? Have you not tried to do whatever it takes to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible? He's doing the exact same thing. He's just tapping into the capital markets. And if he proves himself, the markets are going to do what the markets do best. They're going to follow the leader. They're going to be like, listen, like, this guy's a genius. Like, obviously what he's doing is working. And what I tell everybody, with Bitcoin is like, look, like, buy Bitcoin and hold it for at least 4 years. You're going to feel very smart. And if you make it to 8 years, you're going to feel like a genius. But you're not a genius. All you did was buy Bitcoin, right? So Saylor, all he's doing is he's just buying Bitcoin, again, taking advantage of the capital markets to raise money to buy more Bitcoin. And again, if he keeps doing it and Bitcoin keeps doing his thing, he's going to look like a genius. And fundamentally, he did the same thing that the rest of us did, which was just buy Bitcoin, right? So I forgot what your initial question was, man, but that is what really has me excited, because I think that's really what's going to set. I think that is really what's going to lead this next cycle. There was 3 things that Saylor said needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to hit $5 million per coin. There's 3 things that he said. And this was back in 2022 or 2023, I believe. He said the first thing was the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF. Check. That happened in January of 2024. Next one was the change in the FASB accounting rules. Check. That already happened. The last thing he said was for banks, for the ability for banks to custody Bitcoin. You know what bank had a presentation at Bitcoin for Corporations, the latest conference that they threw? You know what bank did? Citibank. Citibank went on stage at a Bitcoin conference and said, hey guys, we're going to custody Bitcoin. Another tidbit for you. I can't name the bank specifically, but this is someone that I went to high school with. And he's a vice president at one of these very big asset manager banks. And this is someone who I've been trying to orange pill for like a decade. And he texts me, he's like, Nico, we're about to release a product on Bitcoin or for Bitcoin. And if you just start putting those dots together, right, this is happening on a supposed bear market year. Citibank is going on stage and they're saying, we're here to custody. We're gonna start offering custody for Bitcoin in a bear market year. This big bank, which I can't name, but you guys will know the name. Like, it's that prestigious. Is basically saying, oh, we're launching products, on Bitcoin. That should tell you everything you need to know about this next upcoming cycle, the cycle of 2027, 2028, 2029. Who the big players are going to be, who the big buyers are going to be. That should tell you everything you need to know, right? So I think we're right now at like this crossroads in Bitcoin's history. And a little bit is a little bit sad, Walker, in a way, because I think we've lost the cypherpunk component of it, right? Because I think Bitcoiners had this very idealistic view of Bitcoin, which was we all thought that everyone else was going to think like us, right? Like, we really thought like that. We're like, yeah, everyone values freedom. Everyone values sovereignty. The reality is that I think we do, but not everyone else does. But that, putting that aside, I think the next stage of Bitcoin is, can Bitcoin go to 250K? Can Bitcoin go to 300K? Can Bitcoin go to 500,000? That's the big question. And if it can, that means that Saylor's theory is vindicated. That means all his products, all his stocks, whether it's Strategy or STRC, that means that they all work out. And the shockwaves that's going to send throughout Wall Street, I don't think we've never seen something like that before. The FOMO of Wall Street realizing that there's only 21 million Bitcoin. I don't think we've never seen something like that in financial history, because you could say the only thing that you can really compare Bitcoin to is gold. But the thing is, when the price of gold runs up, the production of gold runs up with it, right? It's more expensive, so it makes sense investing more into gold mining. It doesn't matter how high the price of Bitcoin goes up. The amount of Bitcoin that's actively being mined, not only does it stay the same, it gets cut in half every 4 years, right? I don't think Wall Street has realized that aspect of Bitcoin. It hasn't realized it. But with Saylor doing what he's doing over the next 4 years, and if he's right, and if Bitcoin continues to perform like it has in the past, like, man, all the pieces are in place. I'll leave it at that.
Boy, Nico, I swear, even when you were not bullish previously, you still made me bullish, but now you're making me even more bullish. We do have to hit a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to dig into that a little bit more. I also want to dig into some of the Weimar vibes that we are currently feeling right now, because things are starting to feel like we've been on unshaky foundations for a while. It's starting to feel like the cracks are really becoming more apparent every day. The question is, are you paying attention to them? Are you watching what's cracking? Are you protecting yourself with Bitcoin? So stay tuned. We're going to have more with Nico from Simply Bitcoin right after this break. Do not touch that dial. We'll be right back here on RoxomTV.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
Still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. My name is Walker America. The price of Bitcoin is $69,505. Infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. We're going to bring Nico from Simply Bitcoin back here in a second. But first, Walmart is facing backlash from customers and some lawmakers over its rollout of digital price labels. Critics argue the technology creates the potential for rapid price changes, shocker, adding to concerns among consumers already dealing with rising costs. Let's take a look at the report right now, and let's go ahead and roll that clip.
America's biggest retailers rolling out digital shelf price labels for all its stores by the end of the year. Walmart says that having digital price labels will help its store personnel do their jobs better and more effectively and ensure that prices are more uniform across different geographies. But the move is somewhat controversial, as some are worried that having the ability to quickly adapt price labels on the fly could lead to things like demand-based pricing that shifts prices for higher or lower depending on how changing dynamics happen for supply chains. Now, some lawmakers are already in the process of introducing legislation to ban the use of digital shelf labels, or DSLs.
All right, DSLs, you heard it there. Digital shelf labels. Let's bring back Nico from Simply Bitcoin. Okay, Nico, I want to get your take on this because you see something like, hey, we're rolling out these digital price labels. Now, if somebody's not paying much attention, they may think, well, that's just a natural evolution of technology. Of course, digital price labels seems prudent. Let's not chop down so many trees creating those pesky labels that people need to change. But what does this signal to you?
Yeah, man. I mean, do you remember, like, and I'm sure you've seen this, right? You go to like one of your favorite restaurants and they have the original menu that they printed out, and it has the original food and all the menu items and stuff like that. But you look at the prices, right? Sometimes they don't even go through the motions of printing out the menu again. What they do is that they put a little sticker on top of the prices, and they manually with the pen write the actual price changes. But that's just like a broader kind of indication of like how broken money is, right? Like the fact that, like, I think it's the fact that they're not even going through okay, let's just have someone go out there and, let's change the prices and stuff like that. And like how you usually do it, because they have like the little numbers and like, let's do that. No, they're not even bothering to do that anymore. They're just like, okay, like, let's just make this digital. And then, as you can imagine, right, it's a lot harder for you to, go and change your menu, as the example that I brought up, right? You have to get your staff to wake up and then go through every single menu and then make the adjustments, right? Now it's basically, okay, you know what? This is how much inflation went up today. We can just make these adjustments as we go, depending on, how valuable the dollar is, right? Like it's some dystopian level shit. I'm sorry. Like, it really, really is. And it kind of goes back to one of the main themes that I've been saying for many years, which is like, we kind of have this future ahead of us, right? Which is, we really have two futures ahead of us, and they're moving at full speed, right? And in Europe, they're going down the central bank digital currency path, which coincidentally is happening at the same time that they're rolling out digital IDs. Total coincidence. Of course, it's not related, right? And then you have the Bitcoin future ahead of us, which is a future of peace, prosperity, opportunity, hope for all, right? The clip that you just played is a glimpse of the central bank digital currency future that we're heading towards. It's just a glimpse of it. But the awesome part is that if you're saving in Bitcoin and you're earning in Bitcoin, even if, you know, they have these little tags that change the prices, you know, it's variably, you know, they could change the prices very, very quickly. Bitcoin will probably appreciate faster than any of that. So even though, you know, they're rolling out this dystopian stuff to raise the prices faster than they normally would, Bitcoin, you know, if you're saving and earning in Bitcoin, those prices will still probably be cheaper for you, right? So again, you really have two choices here. And I think this is what most people still fail to understand. And, you know, I think, you know, Walker does a really good job, you know, voicing this on his platforms. And we try to do the same on our platforms. You know, we try to raise awareness, right? We try to raise awareness that, listen, there is another way. There is another way here. It isn't a vote harder daddy type of situation. And this is, I think, honestly, where I get a little bit frustrated with the political commentators, right? Whether you're listening to someone on the left or you're listening to someone on the right, the reality is that their only solution to this, even if you talk about, like, for example, Nick Fuentes, which happens to be, like, you know, the most popular kid on the block these days, like, even his solution is like, oh, just vote Democrat because the Trump administration just, you know, did so terribly. Like, that's his solution. Then if you tune into Alex Jones, it's like, vote Republican. You know, you gotta, you know, the globalists, you gotta keep them out, right? And then if you tune into more like a left-wing podcast, it's like, Trump's a demon, you gotta get him out of office. It's like, but the issue remains the same. It's like, it doesn't matter who you get into office. It doesn't matter whether they're team red or team blue. They are literally the cause of why the prices are rising in the first place. Like, they're literally the reason. The government printing money is literally the reason as to why things are expensive. Like, they're literally the cause of this. And I found it hilarious that during the Biden administration, because inflation was such a big problem, like, the bill that they passed was called the Inflation Reduction Act. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, or whatever they exist, but it did mention inflation, and it did mention something regarding a reduction. In that bill, their proposed solution was to print more money. Like, make that make sense, bro. Like, make that make sense.
I don't know if it's Orwell or if it's Idiocracy or what it is, but it's like, it's insane, right? It's insane. And I just want to jump in, then I want to let you cook a little bit more because, sir, you are cooking today. But this is the insane thing to me. It also, you know, I think I saw this shared by TFTC. Shout out to those guys. Marty had basically also said, like, this is Weimar vibes, right?
Absolutely.
And for those that maybe think that, like, they don't exactly know what he might mean by that, like, that's okay. Like, you don't need to know everything. But the idea being, in Weimar Germany and in basically you could go back to, you know, France leading up to the French Revolution as well, right? The whole thing was the currency was being debased so quickly that from the morning to the evening, like, everybody, when you got your paycheck, when you got your day's wages, you would rush to go to the store to buy whatever you could, because by the time, you know, you got there, if you waited a couple hours, the prices may have changed. The prices may have changed in real time, essentially. And this is what we're seeing here. And I think that at a larger point is, like, you remember during COVID, I think COVID was at least the first time for our generation, for a lot of the younger generations, when we saw prices really move rapidly, like almost in pseudo real time. Like, you saw them moving quickly enough where you noticed, wasn't that just like wasn't that ground beef like 50 cents or $1 cheaper like last week or the week before? That's kind of crazy. And then a couple of weeks more, you notice it again. You notice. when it's changing on an hour by hour or a day by day basis, you really notice. And there, I forget whose quote this is, so I'm not even going to try to remember. I'll look it up later, and you guys can call me out if you do know it. But the idea that like any society is about 3 missed meals away from a revolution. Like it's something to that effect. Maybe it's 6 missed meals, whatever. People get hungry. People stop being able to afford food, basic necessities. Bad shit happens. And honestly, like this, if you're a sort of an accelerationist in some ways, you could almost look at this and say, well, boy, this is going to speed things up a little bit, because if people at somewhere like Walmart, where a huge portion of people get their basic necessities, if you can see those values changing in real time, you go in there, you go buy the ground beef. I'll pick that up later. I'll get that, last in my cart or whatever, so it doesn't get too defrosted by the time I get home. You go there later and it's, 10 cents more expensive, 20 cents, 50 cents more expensive. That kind of stuff freaks people out because you can see that in real time. And I think it's the real time nature of this where people are going to go, oh shit, like something's wrong. Hopefully they'd know something's wrong. But to your point, and I think it's so important. You mentioned all these political commentators. This is why, as Bitcoiners, we should continue to call this out. And you do such a great job of this on your show all the time. You and Opti do. Like, look, these guys are always talking about the problems, but they're talking about the symptoms. They're not talking about the disease. They're just blaming red or blue, depending on what side you are, for the problems that they see. But those are the symptoms, right? Anything they're prescribing is a Band-Aid on a hatchet wound in your leg, right? It's like your leg's dangling at the kneecap. It's like you need like some serious triage, but they're like, well, here's a Band-Aid for it, but don't worry, this Band-Aid's colored blue or this Band-Aid's colored red. It's like, no, the disease is the money is broken, and neither red nor blue are going to fix this. But it's hard. And you go, I mean, I'd love your thoughts on just like, what does it take for people to have that realization, to realize like that there isn't that the political solutions brought forward at this time by either side, they're both just putting a Band-Aid on an axe wound. What does it take for people to actually wake up?
Yeah, so it's they have to experience it, right? Like, one of the things that I found really fascinating was that for me to convince someone in the early days, that Bitcoin was a good idea, if they were Venezuelan, they understood in a heartbeat. If they lived in a country that had a relatively stable fiat currency where the inflation rate was so low that you didn't realize you were being stolen from, you kind of just put your head up and you're like, why is that necessary, right? So, but if you are living in a country with double-digit inflation and you get provided a non-sovereign alternative that is censorship resistant, because the countries that are living through double-digit inflation, they tend to be the countries with capital controls, because of course the government doesn't want you, trying to take money out of the country, and they want obviously their local fiat currency to stay up. They understand Bitcoin very, very quickly. So unfortunately, things need to break in order for people to wake up. And I'll give you another example, because I love that you brought up Weimar. I think what people fail to realize is that what's happening right now is a story that has been repeated throughout human history. So during the early Roman Republic, their currency was called the denarius, and the amount of silver in each denarius, it was like in the early Roman Republic, it was like 0.85% of the coin. So it was like, it was 85%. It was 85% silver. Towards the end of the Roman Empire, it was like 0.00000. Like, it was minuscule. There was very little silver left in the money, right? So essentially, you can make a very strong argument that inflation played a role in the demise of the Roman Empire, which at that time was the most powerful empire on the face of the planet, and the most powerful empire the world has ever seen, right? And if you take a look at the American empire, that, again, the founding fathers took a lot of inspiration from Rome, right? And specifically how, the system is structured and all of that stuff. Like, the bird of the United States is the eagle, very similar to Rome, right? A lot of people call the United States New Rome. You know, couple thousand years later, we're literally doing the exact same thing. Expansionist wars, debasing the currency, the moral decay of society, which was very, very predominant in Weimar Germany. History is repeating itself. It's literally repeating itself, right? You know what's the famous saying? It's like history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. It's definitely rhyming. It's rhyming hardcore, right? I think we actually have a chance to break the cycle, because if it's up to humans, obviously history has shown that we don't have the discipline not to debase the currency. And I think it starts off very slowly. I think the leaders that first start doing, they're saying, we're just going to do it a little bit. Just going to do it a little bit. And it's going to be temporary, right? And then the next generation of leaders come. And then they do it a little bit more. And then the next generations of leaders come, and then they do it a little bit more. And then the next generations of leaders come, and then they do it a little bit more. And then you find yourself in a Weimar type of situation, where I would say that the crimes that occurred during the 2008 financial crisis, which I would say were a big inspiration or a big motivation as to why Bitcoin was invented or discovered in the first place, those crimes have not been paid for. No one went to jail for what happened in 2008. That was the biggest financial crime in American history, and no one went to jail for that. In fact, not only did no one go to jail for that, the big banks got a bailout from Main Street. It was Main Street that bailed out Wall Street. So if you want to know why you're a millennial or Gen Zer and you're like, dude, I can't even afford rent, let me just, let me take, I don't know if you've seen this, Walker, another Weimar thing, right? On Uber Eats now, you could take out loans to buy food, bro. Like it's gnarly.
It's insane.
It's crazy. So you want to know why all this is happening? 2008, buddy. 2008. But again, I think this is human nature. And this is why Bitcoin is so beautiful. Because I think Bitcoin essentially understands, I think Satoshi fundamentally understood human nature. And he was able to build a money or discover a money or invent a money that essentially takes the best parts of human nature and incentivizes it in order for Bitcoin not only to survive, but to thrive and humanity to benefit from Bitcoin surviving and thriving. So essentially what Satoshi created was a money system with alignment of incentives where everybody wins. And the fundamental problem with fiat is that it's a system with misaligned incentives. So there's an elite few that benefit while everybody else gets poorer. So this is why we are where we are, right? This is history rhyming. This is history repeating itself. But now we actually have a technological revolution and innovation where it allows us to break the effing cycle. We are able to break the cycle, and we're able to break the cycle with Bitcoin.
I love it, man. Nico, your rants always inspire me. This is why you're the king, right? It's been such a treat to have you on here. We could go for 4 hours. We got to do this in person one of these days, but usually we're too busy having a good time.
When are you coming to the studio, bro? When are you coming down to Miami, dude? You're always welcome.
I'm going to take you up on that because it's still cold up here. I don't know why we punish ourselves up in the Midwest.
Bring your kids, bro. Come down. You can come to my house. It'd be great.
Dude, I'm going to take you up on that, and I think my wife is going to be very happy to hear that as well. But Nico, I want to thank you for joining us here. I'll get you out of here in just a minute. Maybe the last thing I would ask you before I ask you to send people where you want to send them is just what's something that makes you very hopeful. We've talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of things cracking in the system, a lot of things breaking. We've talked about how Bitcoin is this exit, it is this this opt out. But Is there anything else that makes you extremely hopeful, or does it always come back to Bitcoin?
I think the younger generation is waking up. I think the younger generation is had enough. I think the younger generation is going back to tradition. I think the younger generation is essentially remembering the lessons of the past. And I'm very hopeful about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the generation of our kids, Walker, because I just don't think this current system is not sustainable. And I think that generation is completely disillusioned. They just don't buy into it anymore. And I would say the millennial generation, our generation, Walker, is in that camp as well, right? But the militant ones, the ones that are just like, yo, dude, like, nah. I see it in the Zoomers. I see it in them, right? This is like the first generation, younger generation, that is more conservative than the previous one. And the reason, and I don't mean conservative in the political sense, but like conservative in the sense of like they want to have families. There is a spiritual component to it as well. And they're disillusioned, and rightly so. They should be disillusioned, right? They've had enough. They've had enough of the BS. And not only that, they've grown up natively outside of the traditional media complex. So like we forget, but like our parents and our grandparents, they're essentially propagandized in such an expert fashion with legacy media. Like if you watch legacy media now, Walker, we work in new media, but like if you watch legacy media now, dude, you're looking at that, you're like, oh my God, like who's ever watching this literally lives in an alternative reality. Like I remember like the second day of the Iran war, bro, I turned on Fox News because like, I'm like, all right, like let me take a look at like what they're looking at. And they're like, yes, President Trump's operation is going wonderfully. Like, it was like, bro, it's like, what the F is going on? It's crazy. But the thing is, Gen Zers, they're not getting their news off Fox News. They're not getting their news off MSNBC. You know where they're getting their news? They're getting their news from us. They're getting their news from the internet. They're getting their news from the new media. And you know the thing about the internet that I love about the internet is that it's very difficult to lie on the internet. It's very, very difficult. The only currency that actually holds its own on the internet is truth and authenticity. If you're truthful and if you're authentic on the internet, people will listen to you. People will gravitate towards you. If you lie on the internet, you'll get chewed the F up. And those generations, that's where they're getting their information. That's where they're getting their news. And that's how they're going to perceive the world. So that's what makes me really, really hopeful.
Amen to that, man. Nico, this was a treat. Where can people follow you? Check out Simply Bitcoin. When are you guys streaming? People should go check it out. If they've never experienced a Simply Bitcoin rip, luckily you guys do a lot of them. You guys crush it every time. Where do you want to send folks?
Thanks, man. Yeah, you could find us anywhere, like any platform of your choice. Just search Simply Bitcoin. And if you want to tune into a live show, we've been doing it for like 6 years straight. It's 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And you'll get very similar takes to what Walker and I were just talking about. And we have Walker on, every once in a while. We're going to get Walker on very soon. So
good. I can't wait to come back.
It's a great time. It's a little bit different. We joke around a little bit. But yeah, man, I mean, you'll kind of, it's more of like a hangout. You just come and hang out, right? That's really what that's the type of environment we try to create, right? But Walker, always an honor, man. Thank you so much for having me, and shout out to the Roxom team. You guys are doing an incredible job, and Walker killing it like always. Walker literally has the best Bitcoin podcast name. He literally just took it and made it his, which is the Bitcoin podcast. So badass. I told him the first time I got invited to it, I was like, dude, like, I genuinely didn't feel like I was a Bitcoin podcaster until I went on the Bitcoin podcast, right? So
I had to earn the right to ask you on, Nico. Come on, man. You were doing this since I was in my nappies or whatever they say.
Oh,
you know. But no, Nico, appreciate you. People should 100% go check out Simply Bitcoin. You guys do a killer job all the time. You bring great energy. Yeah, it sounds like Opti and I might be getting the pie in the face, maybe. Although I don't think we took the other.
Dude,
side
let's
of that
do it.
bet,
Come to Miami. We'll do it live. We'll do it
Let's
live.
do it. Pies in the face.
Awesome.
All right. I think
Thanks, man.
you've earned that right for us. Well, hey,
thanks, man.
Nico from Simply Bitcoin, thank you so much for joining us. And guys, we've got another 30 minutes here. You're stuck with me, unfortunately, just little old me, but we'll still have a good time. But we'll be right back here in a moment after another commercial break. So do not touch that dial. We'll see you in just a sec here on RoxomTV.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
No! Bitcoin! Come on, little buddy! Bitcoin! I need you! Don't go!
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
Still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
How about stretch preferred stock on Roxom? Receive 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
11.5% paid in Bitcoin? How is that possible?
It's real. Stretch dividends on Roxom gives 11.5% monthly cash dividends paid in Bitcoin.
Dang! I want everyone pitching Roxom to your clients. Corporate traders, asset managers, old, young, Stretch on Roxom is for everyone.
Now that's a birthday gift. 11.5% in Bitcoin.
We are in heaven at 11.5. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The price of Bitcoin is $69,357 infinitely printable Federal Reserve notes per coin. Iran launched 7 missile waves at Israel in under 10 hours overnight, striking Tel Aviv, Dimona, and sites across the north and south. In Tel Aviv, a ballistic missile carrying roughly 100 kilograms of explosives tore through a residential building in an upscale neighborhood, leaving a crater in the road and crushing surrounding vehicles. 6 people were lightly injured across 4 impact sites. Israel's air defenses did not intercept it. Hours earlier, Trump had announced a 5-day pause and, quote, productive conversations towards a deal.
Iran's foreign ministry says you're not telling the truth when it comes to productive conversations. Well, they're going to have to get themselves better public relations. We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement. Perhaps that hasn't been conveyed. The communication, as you know, has been blown to pieces. They're unable to talk to each other. But we've had very strong talks. Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner had them. They went, I would say, perfectly. I would say that if they carry through with that, it'll end that problem, that conflict, and I think it'll end it very, very substantially.
Iran's response was 7 waves of missiles. The Iranian parliament called Trump's claim fake news designed to manipulate oil markets, and Israeli officials said a deal does not appear tangible right now. Iran also replaced its assassinated security chief overnight, appointing a former IRGC general as the new head of the Supreme National Security Council. The war is on its 25th day. The pause is 24 hours old. The missiles kept coming anyway. Monday, Trump's Truth Social post claiming, quote, very good and productive conversations with Iran sent the Dow up 631 points, S&P up 1.15%, oil prices down. Asian markets had been in free fall before it. South Korea down 6.5%, trading briefly suspended in Seoul. Japan down 3.5%. Trump's announcement changed the session entirely. Then came 7 missile waves overnight. Oil climbed back above $100 this morning, erasing the gains. The market is now running on one variable, whether these talks are real. Every trading day is now a hostage to a Truth Social post and what Tehran decides to deny next. Next up, President Trump is telling Senate Republicans that there will be no DHS deal unless Democrats pass the SAVE Act, the voter ID bill that has already failed a Senate vote last week. This is as Senate leadership prepares for a 2-week break on Friday. Meanwhile, TSA is losing officers by the day. 400 have quit, call-out rates above 50% at some airports, and ICE agents are being deployed to checkpoints. The acting TSA deputy administrator has warned smaller airports could close entirely if the situation doesn't improve before the next payday. Trump is now using the airport crisis as political leverage for an unrelated election bill. The shutdown hits its 40th day Friday, and every day Congress is in recess is another day TSA can't pay its people. And today, a federal judge is hearing Anthropic's request for a preliminary injunction over a Pentagon supply chain risk designation. That label has historically been used for foreign adversaries like Huawei, not domestic companies, which is why this case is drawing so much scrutiny. Anthropic argues the designation is being used as leverage in a contract dispute, while the government has not committed to avoiding further action before trial. Microsoft and 22 retired military chiefs have filed in support of Anthropic, adding significant pressure to the situation. The hearing was fast-tracked, and a ruling is expected in the coming days. What's at stake here now is how far the government can go in labeling domestic companies as security risks, because that kind of authority, once expanded, tends to shape how entire industries operate going forward. A Santa Monica jury has found Bill Cosby liable for drugging and sexually assaulting Donna Motzinger in 1972 and awarding $60 million in damages. The mechanism was California's look-back law, which revived the statute of limitations for sexual assault survivors to bring civil claims. Motzinger was a waitress at a Sausalito restaurant when Cosby invited her to his stand-up show, gave her wine and pills she believed were aspirin, and she woke up at home with her clothes removed. Cosby didn't testify. He was previously convicted criminally in 2018, then freed in 2021 when Pennsylvania's Supreme Court threw out the verdict. Civil court was the last avenue. Cosby's attorney says they'll appeal. And the New York Stock Exchange is moving into tokenized markets, partnering with Securitize to build a platform for tokenized securities. The goal is simple: bring stocks and funds onto blockchain rails and eventually enable 24/7 trading. The idea is to make equities work more like Bitcoin and crypto. No closing bell, no fixed hours, just continuous global access. For Wall Street, this is about modernizing markets, speeding up settlement, and reaching investors anywhere in the world at any time. But the structure doesn't really change. These are still traditional assets issued and controlled by institutions. They may live on a blockchain, but they are not permissionless like Bitcoin. The system becomes faster and more accessible, but it remains centralized. At the same time, The real competition is attention. Platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi are exploding because they turn everything into a trade. Election, wars, headlines, all instantly monetized and available for you to gamble on. The public is hooked. Everyone is looking for a quick win, a fast trade, a way to stay in the game. And now Wall Street is adapting, building markets that never close, designed to keep people trading at all hours. So the question is simple. As the New York Stock Exchange moves to 24/7 tokenized trading, is this truly about democratizing access to investing, or just another step toward keeping people constantly trading, constantly watching, and constantly plugged into the system? I have my thoughts, but only time will tell. On this, I just add a quick note. This is a very natural development for these legacy institutions. Of course, if they want to keep pace with what is naturally a 24/7, 365 global market, which you see in Bitcoin and other crypto assets, shitcoins, presumably, this is something that they were naturally going to have to do. Now, the reality is, though, that all of this is just I think, as I stated previously, an attempt to just keep people's attention a little bit more. It's also a great reminder that all of this doesn't fix the underlying problem, right? Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer. It is a removal of trusted third parties from the equation. You know, if you want new ways to gamble on different prediction markets, or, invest in various stocks or gamble on some penny stocks, those are always going to be available. Now, what is not always going to be available is freshly printed Bitcoin, because of course, all the Bitcoin that will ever exist will have entered circulation by the year 2140. We're already at over 95% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, which have been entered into circulation. Millions of those are presumed to be lost or untouchable at this point. And there's usually only a few million Bitcoin float. So the real question is, what happens when an unstoppable force, infinite fiat demand, meets an immovable object, which is absolutely finite, 100% verifiable Bitcoin? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. And again, time will tell. We're going to take a quick break before we hit one more story to close out the day. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back here on RoxomTV.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader,
still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.
Welcome back to RoxomTV. The Trump administration has released a 4-page national AI legislative framework on Friday that boils down to one central demand. Congress should override state AI laws and make sure Washington is the only government setting the rules. The framework, drafted by White House AI czar David Sachs and science advisor Michael Cresidos, calls for no new regulatory body, no open-ended liability for AI developers, regulatory sandboxes that exempt companies from federal rules, and a clear message to the states to stay out of the AI development entirely. The document is organized around 6 policy areas: protecting children, familiar, community impacts, copyright, free speech, innovation, and workforce, and energy, But the through line is preemption. The U.S. wants to position themselves as a leader in the global AI race, and the argument is that a patchwork of conflicting state laws would undermine that. The document says that states, quote, should not be permitted to regulate AI development and should not penalize AI developers for what a third party does with their product. 4 states, Colorado, California, Utah, and Texas, have already passed laws regulating AI in the private sector. The White House wants Congress to override them. Regarding copyright, the administration states plainly that it, quote, believes that training of AI models on copyrighted material does not violate copyright laws. That's the position of every major AI company currently being sued by writers, artists, publishers, and record labels. But instead of pushing Congress to codify that position, the framework says courts should resolve it. It suggests Congress could consider creating a collective licensing system for rights holders to negotiate with AI providers, but says legislators, quote, should not address whether, when or whether such licensing is required. In practice, this means the White House is siding with the AI industry on the substance while telling Congress not to act, letting the courts decide the outcome the companies want without requiring a legislative vote anyone has to defend in an election. On children's safety, the government calls for tools to protect minors online and efforts to combat AI-enabled fraud. On free speech, it includes a push for anti-quote jawboning legislation, the term for indirect government pressure on platforms to censor content. It directs Congress to allow individuals to sue if they're being censored through government influence. The workforce section calls for training programs, but doesn't address job displacement directly, even as AI-driven layoffs accelerate across industries. Block cut 40% of its workforce in February, citing AI restructuring. Crypto.com announced 12% cuts this week. Masari laid off staff as it's pivoted to AI-first operations. Meanwhile, OpenAI is reportedly defying the trend and planning to nearly double its workforce from 4,500 to 8,000 by the end of 2026, hiring across product development, engineering, research, and sales. Is the pattern that companies building AI are hiring, but that companies using AI are firing? The framework addresses the first group's needs. It has nothing to say to the second group's workers. The AI industry loved it. AI Progress, a coalition including Amazon, Anthropic, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Midjourney, and OpenAI, welcomed the copyright language. House Republican leaders immediately endorsed the proposal. The framework needs congressional action to become law, and passing sweeping AI legislation in a midterm year is a heavy lift. And finally, to round out our 3-hour marathon here on RoxomTV, Roxom, the Bitcoin native trading platform and RoxomTV's parent company, just made history. They've launched the first ever oil versus Bitcoin perpetual futures contract, letting traders bet on crude oil directly priced in Bitcoin, no dollars involved. Roxom released a promo video for this. Let's go ahead and take a look.
1973.
But there's one great problem: sharp increases in the price of gasoline.
1990. Go for 2022.
Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports.
Today.
Don't use the strait.
Oil has responded to geopolitical shocks with volatility.
When this is over, oil prices are going to go down very, very rapidly.
And for the first time, you can trade that volatility in Bitcoin, oil BTC, only on Roxom.
This is a major shift. Until now, every oil trade in the world has been tied to US dollars. Roxom just broke that link. Now you can trade the oil to Bitcoin ratio in one position. If you think oil is going up and Bitcoin is going down, or the opposite, you don't need 2 trades anymore. It's all in one. This is not just a new product. It is the early stages of a new financial system where global commodities are priced in Bitcoin instead of dollars. And Roxom is building that market first. Roxom's head of research, Lucas Pagano, put it simply, saying, quote, "We built this because we believe the most interesting trades in the next decade won't be dollar denominated." And, for me, guys, that I am not a trader. I am a saver. I save in Bitcoin. I stack sats as I work as hard as I can to create value in this world and save the value of that hard work in Bitcoin, the best possible way to save it. I do find this fascinating, though, and I think that it's quite an interesting shift to really start pricing everything in Bitcoin. And hopefully it's a good mentality shift for traders to start realizing that perhaps they're not as good of traders as they thought they were when they were just pricing their gains in fiat. But again, only time will tell. And speaking of time, we are at the end of ours here for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on RoxomTV. Again, my name is Walker America. I'm here with you every Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on RoxomTV. You can also catch me on Thursdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I join co-host Hank at Roxom on his show. Again, that's Thursdays and Fridays. So do be sure to check in. Again, I'm Walker America. You can find me everywhere at Walker America. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing your scarce time with us here on RoxomTV. I will see you next week. Take care.
Oh, I forgot to mention, dividends on Roxom are paid in Bitcoin. Stretch your income, 11.5% paid in Bitcoin.
Stretch your income to 11.5, get 11.5 in Bitcoin and Roxom. 11.5%. 11.5%.